today's topic is cloud security lessons. Are CISOs making the right moves? So today we have three speakers in the panel. Two are from life insurance and one is from an NBFC. Kalpesh Doshi from HDFC Life, Ashish Shah from Star Union Daiichi, and Bhavesh Pandey from SK Finance. In the interest of time, I would request the panelists to limit the response to maybe 3-4 minutes each on an average so that we can cover more questions, as many as possible. So we'll just start probably round robin. I'll ask the same questions, and if there's something which you want to talk about more on the subject and not digress, we can discuss that as well. So this cloud services has been around for more than 15 years, if I can remember. And most companies have adopted, they have started slow, and I think the pace of adoption has increased dramatically in the last few years. And some have embraced cloud more than others. First question to you would be, and again, this will be to all the panelists, that how many of you have put your core systems on the cloud? I'm assuming the peripheral systems, many of them would be on the cloud. How many of you have put core systems on the cloud? And is there any regulatory compliance ambiguity or constraint which prevents you to move to the cloud? I'll start with Bhavesh from the NBFC sector. You're regulated by RBI. So whatever regulations RBI has, you have to go by that. Can you tell me your experience about?
Yeah. So good afternoon, all, and thank you for having me here. So we are the NBFC. SK Finance is a Jaipur-based NBFC. It's a 29-year-old company, and as Joydeep just said, like BFSI is more regulated industry. So regulation related to cloud adoption is quite clear. There are, yes, regulation says and their guidelines, RBI master direction has, laid down that guidelines on adoption of technology and cloud. As far as our, approach to adopt cloud technologies, in fact, look, we are 29-year-old. So we still are in a hybrid approach. Most of the business applications we moved on cloud as a SaaS application, not because everyone is adopting the cloud, just because we are going on cloud, but to scale our business, we thought 2-3 years back like we should move on cloud. That's why we migrated our most of the business application on cloud. Apart from that, certain business applications like related to accounting, some other stuff are still in our own data center. So our approach is still hybrid, both in-prem as well as cloud. As far as regulations are concerned, all our SaaS application, because there are some unwritten rule also that talks about that data localization, transactions related data. So while moving or while adopting any cloud application or technology, we keep in mind like that data should be at least in India, though it's not mentioned for NBFC specifically, but we keep all these things in mind because for bankings and for other sector, there are some regulations. But why just to keep the uniformity and benchmarking purpose, we always take care of all those regulations, whether it's related to insurance sector or it's a banking sector. We keep in mind to comply with that requirement also.
Has it ever been not moving to the cloud because the application is not compatible and not cloud ready? Has that been a challenge?
Yeah, we have seen. Based on that, look, while evaluating the technology, we evaluate technology based on all these parameters. So we have rejected sometime. Like I still remember that last year, while evaluating one of the application, we found that that application is not compatible to IPv6 requirement. So RBI must says like all entire network and applications should be IPv6 compatible. So based on that, we rejected that particular application, and we gone for those applications which is interoperability related to accuracies. So there are a certain we prepare that compliance checklist, and we evaluate based on that. So yes, compliance have a role in identifying the technology on cloud as well as in-print.
Okay. Next, we move to Star Union, Ashish. Anything to add or anything different that you have done in terms of how you have adopted cloud and what systems are on the cloud versus some which are not?
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here with you. First of all, I feel more or less it is kind of similar journey for every one of us here in terms of enabling the hybrid cloud kind of setup. I think every organization in some or the other form obviously wants to leverage the benefit of the cloud offering. That's one aspect of it. The other aspect is obviously with respect to how it has to be governed and controlled, which means the point which was spoken by Bhavesh is also kind of applicable for insurance company in some form, whereby the cloud providing solution has to be within India as a geography. And the other element which I would like to kind of add is on three offerings, which is in terms of SaaS-based model or PaaS-based model or infrastructure as a service model. I think all the three models is something which we are contemplating from certain use cases perspective and looking forward for, or are in a process of adopting that. I think that's a small addition from my side.
Okay. And don't you think that if you don't have enough scale, it is not, cloud is expensive, and has that been a constraint depending on how large your setup is? If you have a smaller setup, relatively small, compared to larger setup, you don't get the at least the cost benefit that large setups will have. Has that been a challenge to you, or you have not too much focused on the cost aspect? You are more interested in the other aspects of efficiency and all the other good things that cloud gives.
So cost remains one of the aspects to definitely look into, but I don't think it could be a constraint for taking a decision, because many of the decisions would be in a form of strategic decisions, which are kind of at this point of time to be looked upon from investment perspective and subsequently with the volume scale, etc. that is going to be back. Therefore, cost is something which we definitely consider, but not the only parameter to make the decision for on and off.
Okay. Now, finally, we come to Kalpesh, HDFC Life. Most of the answers which others have given, if you have something similar to say, perhaps you can skip that and say something else. Let's talk about IRDAI as a regulator. How do they compare with SEBI and RBI? I know SEBI, for example, if you have followed the news, they have come up on I think 6th of March, some notification which says that which details the cloud services, what are the do's and don'ts, and what are the regulations which are, and getting into nitty-gritties versus the earlier just passing reference that cloud can be used and without specifying and leaving a lot of room for ambiguity. IRDAI is how do they compare in terms of regulations of as compared to other financial services entities, SEBI and RBI in particular? And maybe a little bit you can talk about HDFC Life. What have they done differently in terms of adopting the cloud?
Thanks, Joseph. Again, like everybody else, we have adopted a hybrid approach. And I think the reason being is the tipping point in everybody's journey was COVID. Because during COVID, you realized you had to provide, it was not a choice. I heard somewhere like, was it a choice? It wasn't a choice. It was something that everybody had to embrace to continue being in the business, right? So that is definitely an expect part of it. Now coming back to the regulator part of it, but before I do that, right, the challenges that we see today in the cloud are typically with legacy applications, which may not be ready in terms of, being able to migrate to your cloud. And let's say, the cost of an upgrade is massive. So how are we going to really factor that, right? So those will remain areas, right? Or those are the applications where every organization is now deciding to see what will be the journey going forward. But if I had to look at every report, it always says that the usage of cloud will continue to rise. So, which means every organization, every year, they are committing and they are acknowledging the fact that yes, they have plans to move more to the cloud, right? And I do believe that's a way forward because when organizations today are talking about customer experience, right? They're talking about hyper personalization. All of that are not going to be possible unless and until you really have scalability at your end. So the on-prem would have its own challenges. Today, the chip shortage, we all know buying a server used to take you months and months to gather. Now, let's say COVID times, nobody had the luxury to wait for 3 months for a server to be, delivered. So those are definitely the advantages and why people move to cloud, right? Coming back on the regulatory piece that you asked, I think every regulator is very well aligned to the industry that they regulate, right? So even from an IRDA perspective, they're absolutely aligned to what insurance companies need to be doing. Obviously, the rigor of RBI would be way more because they are more vulnerable. The exposures are way more, right? Because they actually deal with transactions. They actually deal with money, right? And we're seeing majority of the frauds that happen are money related, right? So you'll always see that difference. SEBI definitely would want to create a culture where there is a transparency, where there is accountability, and cyber is taken seriously. I think similarly, IRDA also has a very well-defined guidelines. In fact, the recent guidelines that they have come out with is end of life or end of service. And if I really look, any practitioner today will agree that what puts you at risk is absolute environments. So if you really look at it, and that's what I said, every regulator comes out with something which is very unique, something which is a great initiative at their end. And we've seen that even with IRDA, right, where they're pushing every organization to retire their end of life, end of service, and make sure that at least the systems that you're using are all updated and you have a support for them. Somewhere even that will fuel your migration to cloud because the major hindrance is compatibility with cloud movement. So if that gets addressed, I think your cloud journey will only be made more easy than anything else.
Right. And when you don't have cloud readiness in the application, it takes time to modify the application to make it ready as well. That's another problem. And when you're stuck with a particular application, which is probably a monopoly in many of the insurance companies, I know I'm not naming names, they are monopolies. So if they are not doing something, you can't force them to do it. So that's unfortunately how it works. Coming to the second question, I'll move on to the fact that everybody is hybrid, some partly in-house, partly in the cloud. And then what happens is the security thing, the piece becomes very complicated in terms of where does the cloud take responsibility, where does the in-house people take responsibility. For certain applications, it is in-house, for certain it is in the cloud service provider infrastructure. So that makes it complicated and vulnerabilities can come in. And then therefore selecting of the cloud service provider is also important of when you're deciding on which all of you have done already. So I would have expected that you have done it before. So that's not a question anymore. But what has been your experience in terms of the responsibility mix between what your own team will do and what the cloud provider will do? And when there is some kind of a conflict, then how do you resolve those kind of situations? I will go with Kalpesh first and then we'll move to the others.
Sure. I think what really happens in cloud, again, it would not be one size that fits all, right? So what would typically happen is in an organization, you would rely on some of the vendors who provide you software as a service, right? You would have your own cloud partner where you would either have infra as a service or platform as a service. So I think that would largely define, what would be your terms. Very important over here is whenever you enter into a contract with a CSP, right? We need to know what are the rights, for the organization. A very simple example is whenever you enter into a contract for a SaaS service, even though it is your organization data, you would have very limited control over the data because the way you are a customer on that platform they are hosting multiple customers on a similar platform. Hence, even if you have to tomorrow say that I feel this is risky and I want you to make the changes, most likely your vendor may not agree, because their argument would be there are hundreds of others using my platform, and if I start listening to every individual customer, right, my cost of serving my customers will shoot up significantly. So that is always something that has to be factored. So very important, Joydeep, is whenever you embark on a journey for SaaS, right, you need to do a thorough job in terms of evaluating whether such an application is ready for a SaaS deployment, where you only may have control over the data, but your platform, your underlying OS, underlying databases are not in your control, and somebody else is going to take care of it. It's very important because third-party risk or third-party compromises are on a rise. Every other day we're seeing, a vendor supporting organization gets compromised, and that's how your data also gets compromised, so on and so forth, right? So, and it's very difficult to, when a compromise happens, it's very difficult to just come and say that it wasn't entirely us. Well, that's a reality, that's a fact. But because it was a data, right, you kind of end up, giving a lot of answers where you're not even in a position to have the, a clarity. So do you even get the right answers from your vendor when things go wrong, right? What is the kind of, attention you're going to get? Let's say a vendor gets compromised, multiple customers are compromised. Do we even know what will be the priority on how every vendor will be kind of, will be brought back, right? Do we know what are their backup strategies? So those are the things we have to be very, very careful when we talk about SaaS model. One thing saying this is, a lot of your AI models today are typically on SaaS because you need to have a data lake, right? And that's Joydeep, coming back to your previous question, cost comes there. So you want to save on the cost, you want to optimize, you want to. So it's always a balance between, risk and what you gain. So, and everybody takes a judicious call. So that is, those are great things. But when they go wrong, what are your rights, right? When you evaluate a partner, what is the rigor that you have to make sure that they have the right environment? Because a lot of SaaS providers may not be really your big cloud service providers with big houses, right? They may be using one of the larger cloud service providers, right? Hosting their environment separately. So that is something we have to be careful. Coming back to even large providers, it's very important that we understand the overall, we call it RASI. So, who is responsible, who is accountable, who should be consulted, and who should be informed. I think that should be very well defined, and that should be part of the contract. And we take a lot of pain to ensure that that's very well documented, because when things go wrong, right, you don't want to start reading a document which is very ambiguous. So you'll have to then be very, very sure about it, that those are very well defined. And I believe, planning is what makes any of your programs a success. So if you have to really plan, let's say, even if you have to appear for an exam, there will be hardly 1 in a million who can just get up and just go for the exam and crack with, brilliant numbers. Majority of us will have to work hard, prepare hard, right? Define when the exams are coming, and so on and so forth. Same thing with your cloud journey. Even if you are having infra as a service or platform as a service, spend that due diligence. So, there are checklists available. CSA has a checklist, and ISD has checklist. So it's not that you don't have checklists. Follow them, right? Evaluate your posture, and cloud again needs a different set of tools to protect itself. So make that right investment, so that at least the misconfiguration. Always feel that two things: one is vulnerability, and other is compliance. So whatever you do on cloud, just make sure that your vulnerability and compliance are managed, right? And then there will always be areas like identity and all of that. But the core, right? It will be how do you manage your vulnerabilities and how do you manage your compliance should be the center point. And that's my take on this.
And talking about data leakage, I mean, there has been news from time to time that leakage is happening, but again, one of them has happened in your group also. But tell me something, when you are having an issue, whoever has the issue, what is the threshold at which you report to the regulator? I mean, there are different regulators having some rules about that. You need to inform customer, you need to inform regulator, you need to inform senior management, management executive committee and all that. you have a set guideline about when to report, because sometimes what happens is, and I think everybody is guilty of that, unless somebody from the customer side finds out and reports something very bad which has happened, companies tend to keep quiet and hope that it will go away and nobody will notice. And again, it's not an accusation that some people are doing that, but what I'm trying to say is that how do you ensure that at the right thing is done at the right time, and you're not against, not reporting on time, etc., whatever your rules are. Do you want to say something on that?
I think, Jyoti, what really happens is it's again defined by the regulator, right? So let's say today Certain has come out with clear guidelines on reporting incidents, and they have put a threshold of 6 hours from the time there is an incident that happens and the time that you have to report it. So every industry, RBI, I know till the time I was dealing with banking, they had a threshold of 24 hours. But if you're Certain as 6 hours, obviously the more aggressive one takes precedence, right? So you'll have to really take care of that. I don't believe that it's not that people are trying to hide now, right? But what really happens today is there are a lot of information which have come out in the dark web, right? Now, there had to be some diligence to validate, right? Whether it's really an issue, because there is a lot of noise as well on the dark web, right?
So like a WhatsApp forward, you need to validate 2 times verified, you have that something like that.
Exactly. I think that is perhaps what every organization then embarks on, right? They would initiate their incident response, right? And if they believe, right, that there is even 1%, right, possibility of this being truthful or this being a reality, right, they will always kick off their incident management process, right? But I think every organization would have to do the due diligence to really ascertain, right? It could also be the fact, right, because it's a very complex environment. You work with your partners, you work with your vendors. Where does it happen, right? What is the kind of visibility that you have into the environments, right? And even certain scenes, right? Wherever the issue has happened, those are the people who would be accountable. Those are the people who will have to take the actions. So those things have to be looked into it.
Okay. Ashish, if you have anything to add, but maybe something on this, and along with this, maybe you can talk about when he just now Kalpesh talks about tools to deploy, etc. How do you decide on deploying new tools? How do you assess and validate that is the right tool for you? And nowadays you have a plethora of tools. I mean, if every day some 10 people will say we are doing something different, and it is so fragmented, the security space especially is so fragmented, and you sometimes wonder what is the overlap between what you have and what you are trying to get. And people are trying to sell you something, and they will always tell you very good things, and they will say that this is what this guy doesn't do and that guy doesn't do. We cater to that part of the vulnerability. So in terms of choosing the tools, what is your approach? And do you at any point think that I think we have covered all the bases, so if any new guy will come and then he will say, I have something which nobody else does. And then you listen to that and then you find out that it is overlapping with something. So what I'm trying to say is that how do you decide what tools are required? There is no ERP tool kind of a concept in security. Every company has their own pieces. And if we had a SAP or something where all the tools were pieces in that, it would have been so easy, And each of the vendors will have different spaces they are covering and a lot of it overlapping. So at what point do you think you have got all the tools that you have that you can think of, and therefore if anybody comes, you will say I'm already covered, so I don't need any more tools. All the spaces are. How do you, first of all, how do you ring fence the whole security landscape and say these are the different pieces of the security puzzle that we need to address, and therefore we have this tool for this tool for that, and all the bases are covered? How do you do that? I mean, is there some exercise like that you do, and then a new vendor comes, you say, okay, see, here it is, my blueprint, everything is covered. There's nothing that you can additionally give me.
Sure, I think this is the most interesting question and the most relevant from the way we are today, right? We keep on hearing one side the various news in terms of red tech, which takes place, and therefore looking into that from advancements of the techniques being used on another side of it. And obviously that puts a kind of point back to us in terms of how well we are prepared with respect to ring fencing our protection layer, and if not complete protection layer, how we are making it kind of difficult on the other side to kind of walk through the setup, right? Therefore, this is a kind of interesting point which is coming up, where every solution vendor or the partner are kind of coming out with some of the other approach which could be proposed as a unique or proposed as the only vendor solution promising to deliver, or it could be a solution which I'm also doing along with my core part of solution which I'm kind of offering to as a bundling part of it. All of these combinations are kind of prevailing in the market space. While there is nothing wrong or right about it, the point which we need to obviously look at is what is that you want to achieve out of it, right? Whether you want to just kind of do it because somebody else is doing it, then obviously all of these questions will be kind of easily answered. And you can kind of look into that part of requirement and meet with any of the solution, because it's probably just a tick mark in terms of saying, yes, I have this solution, or I had this tool, which will kind of ring fence me, and therefore I'm there as a part of my protection layer. However, what needs to be done, probably, I will just put forward certain pointers, not exhaustively, looking at the time constraint, etc. But I will put forward certain points which we kind of consider very, very critically. One is obviously with respect to your risk profile. So when we look at what we are kind of having risk within the setup, the priority of the risk will emerge out very, very clearly, and that's the point which we need to address from mitigation perspective. And therefore, what kind of investment or what kind of tool will be required, and what is that we should have a strategy around that should be coming out is the first point of context. Second one is what is that we want to do with that part of the mitigation strategy? Do we want to kind of look at the best of the solution, which probably working on one side, which is kind of siloed solution? Or do you want to kind of compromise a little bit, but having it kind of combine with other tool sets and giving us a kind of view which is comprehensive enough in terms of the required visibility to get on the side, which are two different extremes. One side is kind of standalone siloed best of the class tool. Other side, you're compromising on that best of the functionality, capability, etc. But looking into the visibility, control, and very single pan of the visibility, as we keep on saying. So these are the two extreme parts of it, and one is to look at their journey within this two spectrum. There are one of the solutions available which will kind of meet and balance out both best of the both, which could be probably your requirement fulfillment as well with respect to your risk mitigation part of it and how you want to see yourself moving forward with. The third element which we kind of look at is by and large the roadmap from the security standpoint of it, from the experts, which is talking about how and what is something which is kind of emerging out in the space, and getting some inference of that and taking a decision with respect to what you should kind of build with. The fourth parameter which we look at is as we keep on saying, the skill sets are kind of scarcity within the cybersecurity domain, right? And therefore, what is that you want to do it with that kind of resource management, skill set management, whether you will kind of connect and latch into the solution provider as a managed services or comprehensive contract, or whether you would like to do combination of it, or whether you would like to do it on your own. So that's a point which we will look at while considering which kind of tool and how and all of that.
Okay, Bhavesh, anything to add there?
I will just repeat it, that the first question that you asked, that the cloud adoption. So I am a little bit differ from Kalpesh, because in a NBFC space, that adoption of cloud has started, I think, 5 years back. That's enough. That is not because of monetary stuff. Money plays a role, but for the scalability, that the amount of competition in the market to provide the loan, the number of NBFCs are coming in in India is you can see the speed. So for each and every type of business, line of business, whether it's related to personal loan or car loan, you have n number of options. So to get the business organization decided to, go for cloud. Because I will give you certain example. Like in my previous organization, if you will not able to tell your customer in a next 2 to 3 minutes, like you are providing him a loan, they will go on another counter. So that's why organization has started adopting the cloud for the scalability. In my current organization, our penetration to rural area or semi-urban is very high. We have more than 550 locations, but the majority are in either semi-urban or in a rural or semi-urban. So opening office in a rural area is very tough, but our sales executive had that mobile application roaming in a rural area and giving us the business. That's why cloud adoption was very important. As far as the deployment and operational risk and configuration are concerned, as Kapil says rightly, every cloud adaptation is not a one fit for all. So every organization having a different requirement. Some having a requirement related to infrastructure services, some having a SaaS requirement, some having need a platform to deploy their own application. So every organization must assess their own requirement, and that should be the base of that assessment should be the business objective. So based on business objective, you evaluate your cloud requirement. I'm also aware that there are many organizations they still having issues in-house data center, and they are unutilized. Now they are utilizing 50 or 60%. So what is the money you invested in that? So if you have a chance to deploy certain even non-business application, you can deploy over there. But as far as cloud adoption are concerned, what I believe we having a responsibility matrix I created in my organization or even in my previous organization, where we define like what all area the CSP used to perform, what we will do, and what our operation partner who is giving support for cloud. Because in earlier days or even now also, that getting a right resource to manage cloud operation internally is a bit difficult. So most of the things we outsource. So getting outsource partner, evaluating that outsource partner, ensuring that they are configuring in a right way, the way we directed, the way we decided. These things, the monitoring of cloud operation is very important for the security point of view. Apart from that, on a security identification of security tool are concerned, look, every organization having some base guidelines, some base tool, but that doesn't fit in a cloud environment. So there should be a cloud assessment process in every organization, and that should be conducted at least quarterly. I'm telling you, that should include the configuration review also. And based on that, whatever risk you identify, take call to mitigate that risk either through tools, processes, or review, audit, everything. So that's it with the approach for this cloud security.
The regulators have requirements for doing audit periodically. Each regulator might have different in terms of.
So as far as
year is too long in today's day and age. So probably quarterly or 6 monthly. Each regulator will have their own.
I didn't say about the audit quarterly. As far as audit are concerned, regulator having a mandate to do at least once a year. I said internal review mechanism at least quarterly to review what all operational activities are happening at the cloud support partner side, what all configuration has been performed, whether it's being performed as per the change management, as per that laid down process of the organization. That should be quarterly. As far as audit are concerned, it's a once a year, and that should be, and it's nowhere mentioned whether it's for in-prem or for cloud. It should be all that their scope should include entire IT stuff. So it's nowhere it's mentioned there should be a separate for cloud and internal operation. So that's the thing.
Kalpesh, what is the level of automation? I think we'll move on to automation. I know cloud brings in a lot of discipline in terms of automation. thanks to the tools they give you as part of their engagement with you. So, in what areas are the level of automation you think has given value to the company? I think the areas which are more critical are deployment, obviously monitoring, and when something goes wrong, how to recover. What is the level of visibility that you have in terms of being able to see these maybe on a pane or a dashboard? And let's say DR, for example. I mean, a lot of people have. I think most people have done automation of moving from from the primary to DR and back. So that would also require a reasonable amount of rigor to make sure that if it is automated, all the configuration, all the change control mechanisms, they are all falling in place. You want to talk a little bit about automation in general, and especially pertaining to cloud, perhaps will be more relevant for this topic.
Sure. I think a couple of things, right, which are very pertinent. I would say not only cloud, but when you look at cyber security, Joydeep, you rightly covered an area of resilience. Cyber resilience is going to be important, right? A DR today is not only about having a backup, or it's not about having an online backup. It's also about what if that backup is also encrypted, all right? So, and how do you then automate, right? How do you create that intelligence, in your backup, so that tomorrow there is a threat actor, right? It understands, right? And it always has a clean copy. I've just given you a certain example with something that you quoted on backup, right? It's an important area, all right? But there are also other areas, specifically when it comes to, your vulnerabilities, configurations, and all of them. And I always feel, when I talk about automation, right, it's always elephant in the room, right? And it's how every individual will interpret that, right? For somebody, automation could be, let's say, if you drive a car, if you have a power steering, it is an automation, right? After a certain time, right? Or for some individuals, having an automatic gear is automation, right? For somebody, having an autonomous car is automation, right? So your journey, your maturity defines what is the readiness for you to adopt and accept the automation within your environments. All said, all done, right? Automation is necessary. Today, we have tools, which helps you to look at a variety of logs. It will help you to look at a larger spectrum of your environment. And, we have changed. A classic example is your antivirus. It was all signature based, right? They evolved immensely. Today, they're anomaly detection, right? They really, it's like started thinking like a adversary, right? Apply the TTPs, right? And see if your environment could be compromised. It's understanding, are there anomalies that would be exploited, right? So those are the kind of automation. Also, you touched upon a very important topic on audits. I think that's where also your automation plays a significant role, because a point in time audits are absolute, right? And Joydeep, I can't agree more with you. It doesn't give an assurance to anybody, right? Leave apart a regulator, even talk to your own board members. They will say it is a point in time, it's a sample base. Where is the confidence out there? So there is a moment to continuous audits, right? So now you have various mechanisms where you can scan your applications on real time. So they have runtime scanners, right, which will keep on assessing the health of your applications as you use them, right? There is a lot of those things that are happening in the in the industry space, right? Your SIM or your SOC is getting a lot of automation. Your visibility is getting more simplified. When I look at automation, it necessarily doesn't mean that there's some rocket science into it. Automation to me is something that machines can do better than humans, right? So how are we then using the machine? So when you have a large chunk of data to be processed, right, and you want to avoid human errors, and you apply now we can call it AI, ML. A lot of people will come and tell us that those are jargons, right? Show me a real use case. I'll not get there, right? But the reality remains that wherever machine can do better than humans, right? That's automation to me. And I've seen over a period of time. Look at any specter. As I said, backups today are aware of if they have basically a ransomware. Somebody will always come and say that even after that you get infected. But it's something is better than having nothing. So at least you have something, and every technology evolves. It's not that you come out with a concept and it hits, the peak, on day one. It's a journey that everyone will take, but the journey is started. Visibility. Joydeep, because today what has happened is every incident, what has been established is organizations are not even aware for at least about 30 days or more that they have been compromised, which means, your threat actor has been laterally moving, is trying to do a privilege escalation. You might have a beacon, right? But has a beacon been able to communicate with the CNC server, right? Has it been able to download custom payloads? Has it been able to, achieve the privilege escalations? Has it been able to reach your crown jewels, right? Crown jewels here is always 80. From there, it doesn't matter how many patches you have applied after that, because once anybody has a credential, he or she is an authorized user. So, everything is then, available at that disposal. So that's where again automation plays a role, right? So you have to really look at it that perspective. That's a larger topic, right? I know we'll need a separate 1 hour, purely on this topic, because automation itself has so many dimensions to it. But if I have to really cover that in a couple of minutes, this is my take on it. Automation is happening. It's happening. Every tool has a maturity, right? And you have to decide as to what will be the journey. Last 20 seconds on this is, there's a rush for a lot of tools, right? Because automation means, it's like a child, right, who's been offered a candy, and the candy looks, very, delightful, and the child would want to feel, that this is deep thing that I'm living for, right? So, when you think about automation, when you hear that from your vendors, always make sure that you do you do an assessment on how it fits your culture, because what comes with automation is also complexity. So even a simple thing that becomes so complex, right, that like what perhaps needed one person to manage may need now 6% to even look at the data. And that is, we talk about fatigue, right? Your SOC generates tons of data. In all honesty, we don't have the wherewithal of looking at every event, because even a medium-sized organization generates more than 1 lakh events. Now, if everybody had to read every event and analyze every event, we all know you definitely need an army. And to add to that, there's a severe shortage of skills in the industry. So you have to be very prudent about what is a role automation is playing. And as I said, the core principle is removing, your human touch points, right, where humans aren't entirely great, simplifying that and, making it more predictable, or adding context to what your teams are doing so that they can make informed decisions. And that's my take on it.
Now, in terms of security incidents that all of us have, some small, some large, what usually has been the reason why it has happened? I mean, I'm not pointing to any particular security incident. I mean, you'll be having incidents from time to time. Is it because of wrong configuration, change management, patch management, people making mistakes, I don't know, lack of visibility? It can be anything. I think, Ashish, can you say something about your experience in terms of when incidents have happened? What usually has been the reason? And I think, in my view, I would say most of it would have to do with people making mistakes or doing something wrong, where probably automation would have not would have prevented that from happening. Is that something similar to what your experience has been?
So, Joydeep, rightly, again, the point of question is again right from two context perspective. One is the earlier question in terms of why automation is very important on cybersecurity as well. So, I just like to kind of mix certain comments on that side of it and then come to this question specifically. I see a kind of a transformation from the marketplace perspective as far as cybersecurity tools, technology and approach is concerned, whereby traditionally we were kind of just looking into the monitoring of the system in isolation in silos at some point of time, which was great at that point of time, having the situation to manage, having the setup, which was kind of by and large within the office premises, right, within the control environment, etc. And now that there is no perimeter, as we keep on saying from cybersecurity perspective, and therefore the data is kind of sitting everywhere, as we all know. the protection layer which we need to kind of look at is kind of completely different. The complexity to manage the data and the asset and devices is kind of completely different than what used to be. And there is where the need for automation, need for having the visibility, need for doing the things the way it got to be at that point of time in order to kind of protect or safeguard the data or the device is kind of completely coming up in a different way altogether. So from security incident perspective also, I see the similar kind of thing whereby in today's context, the security incidents are more coming up, which could be easily managed or rightly being managed from automation perspective, where you see something and rather than people to kind of act upon it from security response perspective. Obviously, we would like to kind of look at the automation there. May not be a complete automation in full swing, maybe in some form, whereby those kind of things are being taken care of automatically in terms of safeguarding and protecting the device. I think that's the transformation there. I definitely look forward and see a kind of trend completely clearly in terms of the way the automation therefore can play a role and emerge out as a kind of big help in terms of response time.
In security incidents, I mean, when you are able to detect it, it is as a result of some alert coming through some of the tools, CM tools or SOC, etc. And there also you get hundreds of such alerts every day. So how do you make sure that the alerts are not too many and only the critical one comes and it gets escalated at the right time and it goes to second level, third level, all the good things that alert systems do? Is it very effective, the alert system, in terms of being able to catch an incident, and what has been the experience? Bhavesh, you want to touch on that?
So on incident management, Kadapesh rightly said this automation is, it's a big and that only we can able to minimize and effectively handle all these alerts, because from SOC we have daily hundreds of alerts, from DNP, from other consoles we have hundreds of alerts coming on a daily basis. Each and every alert getting attention is very difficult. So automation plays a role here to identify the critical alerts, remove the false positive, do changes at maybe at device level, alert that particular location wise. So automation plays a very important role in an incident handling nowadays, because as we rightly said, look, for incident there can be a number of reasons, like misconfiguration, maybe that gap in patching, gap in vulnerability management. But how we get to know about that incident? Mainly through some kind of alerts. Fine. And alert monitoring is very important, and automation plays a role. We have certain number of tools, even in a cloud environment, AWS having their tool. We have our own separate SOC center, and we are improving our SOC management through now XDR, getting that automated response where from we are receiving from the devices. So automation plays a very important role now in fixing that our incident response. As far as big incidents are concerned, like some ransomware or nationwide approach, look, through all these mechanisms, also we will not able to stop these incidents maybe. So we'll have a complete framework to handle that incident. Some small incidents at a individual level, maybe at certain device level, but for organization-wide incident, cybersecurity incidents, we'll have a complete framework where involvement of business, legal, compliance, technology team, partner is very much required. So we'll have a complete framework. As for the category of incidents, so in my organization, I have categorized a different type of incidents and their response plans. So in a crisis, RBI says like you should have a cyber crisis management plan. So inside, and that's to be tested regularly. There is no frequency incident. So we have created a cyber crisis management plan. We identified all types of crisis and then their response plan. And we do testing against all those plans. So whether in case of real-time scenario, whether it will work or not. So we should have a certain plan in place to counter all these type of cyber attacks.
Well, now talking about automation once again, automation perhaps has reduced your requirement for manpower. You do more and more automation, you need less and less of people. And given that skilled resources are scarce and difficult to get, it has helped you in not requiring so many people.
So
What about that?
So as Kalpesh ji rightly said, like sometime automation complicate the things, and it's not always if you will automate, it's going to reduce your manpower. Fine. So what approach organizations should take should be what any automation or any new technology is going to help you. That should be written in a plain language, like where it's going to help you in your operation, in your business, on your security posture, where it's going to help you. And that should be in a plain language, not should be in a technology term. Look, this is that AI and ML things, and this is going to help us. No, in a plain language where it's going to help the organization. If you are getting the answer of that plain questions, go ahead for automation.
I think we've covered a lot of areas in this security and cloud journey. I think one of the important things is recognizing the challenges are there as a first step to decide what to do and what solutions to implement. And as an organization, we all have to be constantly on guard to protect the enterprise from new and emerging threats from time to time. I'd like to thank you all for participating in this very hopefully absorbing discussion. I hope you enjoyed.
For more updates from CXO TV, please like and subscribe to our channel.